So after the initial success of the first start, it was time for the coolant change. So I stopped the engine, let the thing cool down. The next day, drained out half of the coolant. There's a drain plug on the bottom of the radiator, a little plastic Phillips screw that you can take out. And then right down there under the engine mount is a little 16mm drain plug. You can't get to it from underneath because everything's in the way, but if you take the battery out, you can get down there. Quite easy to get to. So I drained out about half of the distilled water that was in there. If you remember, but when I got the car, there was no cooling at all, it was all dry. So after we'd run it, put in a bottle of this cleaner. It's a clear liquid, I'm not right sure what it does, supposed to descale or something like that. Filled it back up with water. I've got the throttle body coolant line bypassed straight onto the back valve. I can't remember what back stands for, but it's something to do with it uses hot water to change the airflow on startup. That goes back down into the system. This has got water in it, so it all managed to squirt around. Got about another 7 or 8 litres in. Tried to start the car, it was very difficult to start. So I suspect this is where we're starting to get some flooding problems. I managed to have the foot on the floor on the accelerator, which cuts off supply to the fuel pump, which stops fuel being injected in, which we know that the injectors work because we've seen those. I'll go on to the flooding problems later on, but eventually it did start. So ran it up to temperature, the coolant gauge worked, that got up to about halfway. After about 10-15 minutes, switched it off, back out with the coolant drain that's down there. So I drained it while it was hot, and it about 8 litres came out. And then once it had cooled down, I just stuck a hose pipe in the top and let it run through for a little bit. So at this point, I thought all the coolant was out. The thermostat had opened because it must have done because it was up to temperature. Let it cool down and then put in 4 litres of normal blue glycol ready mix coolant, and that's all I got in. So it was 4 litres went in plus about another ½ litre of water that's in that bottle. It should take 8 litres, but there's only about 4.5–5 litres in there at the moment, and I suspect there may be a problem with the thermostat not opening. So I tried to start the car again and it's not started since. So I think we've got a big flood problem. So that's where I am at the moment. I'll talk about the flooding in a short while. So engine flooding on a rotary, quite a common thing. The injectors are working. I've had the injectors back out again, and because one thing I didn't do is actually check them for dripping and leaking. So I put them back on the carb cleaner with the little gadget, and there's no drips. Everything looks okay. Stuck the injectors back in, and then tried to do the deflood routine, which is pull out that fuse there, which controls the fuel pump. So the fuel pump doesn't run. You crank the engine with the accelerator down to the floor, which is supposed to deflood, get all the unburnt fuel out of the chambers, and God knows where it goes, down into the oil presumably, and dilutes that. But that just didn't work, no chance. So then there's another idea where you take out all the spark plugs and stick a bit of automatic transmission fluid into the bores, spin that with the plugs out, and you get a fair bit of smoke. Well, the smoke is more petrol vapour that comes out. Put the plugs back in, connect it back up, put the relay back in and try and start it. It coughs and splutters, but I just can't get it to run. So I've done that, I don't know, 5 or 6 times now, and it just won't work. So yesterday I've had the plugs out, and I've been spinning the engine with the plugs out and the fuel pump relay missing, so there's no fuel, shouldn't be any fuel going in. The thing's spinning away, the vapours come out, I've left it half an hour, come in and do another 10-15 second spin, vapours are coming out, and eventually after sort of another half a dozen turns, the vapours have stopped. So I'll just do another quick spin now, and let's see if any vapours come out. That was yesterday. It's been sat overnight, so let's just do another spin, see if anything comes out. Right, so battery connected, spark plugs out, fuel pump relay out. Battery charged up, no obvious signs of fuel vapour coming out, so I've got to assume that it's dry in there. So now I'm going to do that again over the next couple of hours. Every 15-20 minutes I'll come out and give it a spin. I'll put a little squirt of automatic transmission fluid in, I don't know, what have we got on here? About half of that, which is what, 7 millilitres. Just a quick squirt in the bottom leading bore holes. Put the plugs back in, put the plug leads back in, fuse in, and then we'll give it a start. I'll video that as well. So we've got a couple of squirts of oil in each chamber. Spark plug's still out. Few wisps of oil smoke coming out of there, but not as much as there was earlier. I think we'll go for a fire up next time. Right, so here we go for a startup attempt. We've had a couple of more turns with the spark plugs out. That all seems dry. There's about 5 mil of oil now in each bore. The fuel pump fuse is back in. I keep calling it relay, but it's not, it's just a 30 amp fuse. Spark plugs are in, battery's charged. Let's have a go. I'm just going to spin it with no accelerator, just see how it goes, 5 or 6 seconds. If it catches, I'll try and catch it on the accelerator, but I'm not going to give it any throttle. Battery's charged but not connected. Put the battery on. So the deflood works. Fair bit of smoke coming out. Oh, it's about to die. Go on, keep going, keep going. Oh, idling nicely. It's about 800 or 900 RPM. Let's grab the camera. Looks a bit lumpy, it's not particularly smooth, but it's running, so it was flooded all along. I'll go through another chat later about what I think was the main problem. we've got oil pressure, got no fuel in it, so I'm just going to leave it to run for 10-15 minutes now, see if it'll get up to temperature. So it's running. We're getting some smoke coming up from around the turbo again, which I had before. It idles okay, it's a bit rough. When I try and give it some gas, it almost stalls out when I start to see the turbo boost gauge move. So I give it a little bit of gas, it goes okay on very steady up to about 3000 RPM. But if I stick my foot down, when I feel the resistance of, it almost feels like when the second choke used to come in on a twin choke carburettor, it gets a bit more resistance and then it just dies off a little bit, so that needs investigating, but it's running anyway, so thumbs up. It's smoking a fair bit now, that doesn't seem too good. It's just done a quick pop and the engine revs have increased, as though something's just switched on, switched off, got up to temperature, but it's bloody smoking. So it's been running for half an hour and we've got water coming out, and it sounds like there's some boiling going on inside the radiator. Definitely boiling in there, I can see it bubbling away like a little kettle going. We've got what feels like steam coming up from round the turbo. It got up to temperature, but I see some thermostat's probably not opening and we're just boiling at the moment, so I'm going to have to leave it. There is coolant dripping from, well, it's dripping out of there, and it's dripping out of there. The smoking on the exhaust started to reduce. It was idling around 2000 RPM. The turbo cutting out problem disappeared once it had warmed up. I could press the accelerator down until I felt the resistance on the cable. The turbo spun and there was a click, which I think is there's a cover on the turbo there which is loose. So I think that is boiling away in there. Thing is, you couldn't hear any of that while the engine was running. Smoke from the exhaust did reduce a fair bit, but I'm not surprised it's smoking with the amount of transmission fluid I've poured in there over the last few days. So right, let's leave this for an hour or so now, let it cool down, and I'll come back and maybe take the water pump off and see if the thermostat is knackered, because that doesn't seem right. Boiling dry after half an hour. Right, so it's 15 minutes, 20 minutes since I turned it off. The expansion tank is still gurgling away, so there's air still blowing through there, or it's still boiling. One thing I didn't check is take the oil filler cap off while it's running to see if we've got any sucking or blowing out of there. I'll do that again when I try next time. I didn't think that the blower was working on the heater, but I've just pushed a couple of the buttons and the thing sprung into life and filled my face with dust and muck, and we got hot air coming through, so doing that could have opened up the heater matrix to allow coolant in, which is why we've had a coolant drop. Maybe, I'm just guessing. I'm not going to take that cap off until it's had a cool down for a good few hours. So but yeah, we're getting a lot of smoke coming from round the turbo. You can just see that cover there is like an iron rusty cover over the top of it, and it's loose. So I really need to get down there and have a look what oil lines are going to it, and when they started boiling over, what appeared to be steam coming out. So there may be a coolant line going through it, but I doubt it. We'll find out later. So I'll have to take off this air box and the MAF or airflow meter and tubing and piping and all that malarkey. and investigate why it's got a rough idle. It could be something to do with that waxy thing on the jacket there. Maybe I need to prop that open or close it off, because it did run really rough. Not rough. It wouldn't hold any revs past about 2,000 or 3,000 RPM until there was a click, loads of smoke came out, and then it ran fine. Okay. So I just changed the frame rate on the camera. It was on 4K 60 frames a second. And it was getting some flickering off the light, so I've gone back down to normal 1080, 60 frames, see how that goes. So it's been stood for 2 or 3 hours now. It's gone cool. I've had the lid off the coolant and got in about another litre, half a litre. So not a lot came out of it, which is a bit worrying. I've not taken anything apart yet. I'm just going to see if it'll start, see if we're back to being flooded or not. So same again, I'm going to turn it for 5 or 10 seconds, see if it starts, no throttle. Battery on. Lower on. So it started. Looks to be doing similar to last time. Get the camera off. So there's no smoke. So possibly it's just smoke burning off when the exhaust's getting hot from what I've put in before. So I'm just going to take the oil filler cap off, see if we get anything coming out of there. Just stick a glove on. Watch the belt. There's no blow and there's no suck. Nothing. Just normal atmospheric pressure by the looks of it. Oh, it seems to be idling nice and smooth, that. Just have a look at the temperature gauge, see where it is. It's bottom right. Idling about 1,000, 1,100. So yeah, that's going good. The fan is viscous coupled fan, it's not electric. You can't really tell with this light. Yeah, it's going faster. I think it's just the light that's flashing at 50 Hz. There's an LED lamp. I think it's that that's giving us flickering effects. Yeah. The camera should adjust to the light anyway. It does flicker though, even on 50, 60 frames a second. I think this was just bubbling away. There's a bit of water in the bottom of it. So I think it filled it up with hot water. So that filled right to the top and it was bubbling. So it could have been boiling, but it was probably just air going through there. Now I don't know where the overflow comes from. Oh, it's that. So that goes down there and into there. So I think it was just blowing air through the top of there and bubbling in there. That's a theory. If anyone's got any others, I'm not going to say it. Leave a note. Well, I'm happy with that. I'm going to fall over that jack one day. No smoke, no steam. Big ramps ready to put it up to have a look at the underneath to get some of the crusty shite off. And if it behaves itself, it might even get a wash this afternoon. It's a bit khaki. Okay, I'll just let it run for another 10 minutes. See if it starts boiling, but yeah, that seems to be running nice.